The worst kind of experiment a startup can run is the kind where they say, I'm going to put up an ad and see what happens, because there's no hypothesis. Hey friends, I'm JDM. I'm a venture builder. I facilitate the launch and scale of startups and other innovations. And an experiment has to be a controlled test of an hypothesis. And an hypothesis always has three things. It's discrete, it's specific, and it's falsifiable. It has to be discrete in the sense that we're only testing one thing. Any experiment that is testing for 5 or 10 or 15 things is going to have a lot of difficulty separating the signal from the noise. And you're likely just to get false positives in there anyway. An hypothesis also has to be specific. Who, what, when, where, how. All of the details have to be defined in advance. Otherwise, it's not exactly clear what we're testing. And last, in addition to being discrete and specific, it also has to be falsifiable. If you remember back to your science class, this is the idea that the whole process of doing science is attempting to falsify something. And this means that when we run an experiment in a startup, we need an unambiguous way of telling whether it succeeded or whether it failed. There's a number that if we hit it, then we were successful. And if we did not, we weren't. That's what defines an actual experiment. The problem with any other kind of experiment is that if you're not testing an hypothesis, you're really not testing anything at all. So this leads us back to the opener, because a lot of founders will say, I'm going to try this effort and we're going to see what happens. I'm going to throw up an ad. I'm going to see what happens. We're going to contact some potential leads on LinkedIn and we're going to see what happens. We're going to launch this feature out. We're going to see what happens. But the problem with seeing what happens is that you'll always succeed in seeing what happened. But you won't actually learn anything because you didn't define what success looked like in advance. And so you're never forced to ask the question when it doesn't hit that mark, what does this mean? And what does this mean is the most impactful, powerful question that you can ask when something doesn't go right. What does it mean for this to be wrong? Is it a little bit wrong? Is a lot of it wrong? Does it mean a minor tweak in our model? Does it mean we're not just going to hit the number that we thought, but we're still hitting a pretty good number? Or does it mean that we're on the wrong track and that we have to do a pivot, a minor pivot or a major pivot, or maybe there's no there at all? But you have to force yourself to ask, what does this mean? And the only way that you can do that is if you run a controlled test of an hypothesis.